Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Your Wellbeing Hub's podcast. My name is Sally Desborough. Hope everyone is listening in and well. I thought it'd be really nice for Laura and I to get together to have a chat about the company, what we do, why we do it, in case you've never heard of us and who we are. It's a very informal, free-flowing conversation. So very little prep has been done here. We're just going to be our true, authentic selves, and I'm sure we'll enjoy it. And if you don't, I apologise in advance. Laura, let me come to you. Do you want to give a brief intro about you?
So my name's Laura. I obviously work for Sally at Your Wellbeing Hub. A little bit about me. I'm a mum of two kids who keep me very much on my toes. So, but yeah, the work I do with Sally at Your Wellbeing Hub, I help her with all her sort of inquiries, her bookings. If you've been in contact with us, you probably get an email response from me most times. And it's been really nice to sort of learn a lot more about the business and sort of the mental health world. For a little bit of background, my sister suffers with depression. So it's actually been really nice to join a company that sort of links back into that and being able to sort of, from my point of view, understand more about it, because then that kind of helps me with my sister as well. But yeah, it's been really lovely. I've been working for Sally for, well, just under a year now. It'll be a year in June. That feels like it's flown by,
I
actually.
believe it. It's so good, and like, I know I say it to you all the time, but I literally couldn't stop. Like there's so much I don't have to worry about because it has to get done. So I'm always very grateful for all
And
your
it's a nice
support.
partnership as well. So it works really
I
well.
know you're saying you work for Sunny. I'm like, no, you work with me.
Yeah, I work with you alongside you.
You work with me. We work on things together. Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's yeah, you're you know what you do is so invaluable, and I couldn't run the business without you. And I've had ups and downs with kind of like support in the past, and I've had periods where I've been doing it all myself, and after a month I'm absolutely exhausted because delivering training, dealing with
Yeah,
bookings, invoicing, chasing. There is so much that you do behind the scenes that's oh, it's just so important. It wouldn't run
yeah,
without you. So yeah, absolutely, like working together. And yes, it has been nearly a year, which
I can't
I
believe.
can't
No.
believe, but I'm very grateful. Very um grateful.
Yeah, and it has. It's been really lovely as well. And to learn more about the business as well, I'm going to be joining one of the courses at the end of April, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really nice just learning more about the business and sort of being in this industry and knowing that how much we help people and help people sort of with their courses and all their training and everything. It's been
Yeah.
lovely so far, so that's really good.
Yeah. And that's, that's why we do it, right? So, I started the business to try and help people feel more empowered with skills to engage in conversations around mental health. And I'm really happy that you're joining the course. What's the end of this month, right? End of April. Um, because you know about the courses, you know the content of the courses, but you've not lived the course. So I think that'll be helpful for you to
Bit
understand.
of practice as well, which will be
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good a good skill to have, because I think that's probably one of the hardest things with the mental health and is actually knowing how to have the conversations with
Yeah,
people.
yeah, for sure. I remember when I was unwell, so I really wanted to do more mental health and wellbeing because in 2016 I had depression, which but other people
Yeah,
might not know. So I went through a really bad episode of depression, which took me out of 2016 pretty much, and I was unwell that whole year. And I got to the end of the year, and everything was a bit of a blur. Like I can tell you, I turned 30 in 2016, had a 30th party, and at that point I was unwell and was on medication at that point. I think I was taking medication for depression, so I was really unwell, but I kind of didn't talk about how I was feeling. I didn't talk about my thoughts. I didn't talk about any of it, even though people, my family, my sister, my partner, very much like, Sally, are you okay? What's going on? You're not your usual self. You don't sound your usual self. And
yeah,
it was kind of, everyone's got their own problems and their own worries. And I didn't want to burden people with what I was feeling. And so I kind of just held onto it, even though the love was there. I was like, I
yeah.
don't feel like I could, even though there was a lot of care shown. So I kind of just held on to everything.
Yeah.
And equally, there's a lot of kind of self-judgment and negativity of, what's wrong with you? Why are you being so oversensitive? Stop being such an like idiot.
Yeah.
I'd had periods of low mood before, but it lasted like a week maybe, and I'd managed to pull myself out. But this time I couldn't shove it. It wouldn't go away. And I was like, oh, this is very, very different and I don't understand it.
Yeah.
So in truth, I wasn't really aware of what was going on and what was happening myself. So I definitely wanted to do more to raise that awareness and encourage the conversations around it. Because when I did finally open up, the people that I trusted were amazingly supportive and understanding, and there was zero judgment. And, when I said to them, oh, doctor, says I've got depression, my family very much, oh, I feel really emotional. Like, what can we do to support and all of that kind of stuff. But equally, I had, people saying to me, I was signed off for 2 weeks off work initially, which was not near enough, but I had overwhelming feelings of like guilt and letting people down and all this kind of stuff. So went back to work far too quickly. And one of the first things I bumped into a manager, and I think he was an associate director. And the associate director said, "Are you fixed now?" And I was just like, "Oh, I could cry." And then he left the room, and then the manager said, "I just want to give you a hug," and that made me want to cry. So
Yeah.
like,
So
how would you do anything right? You said horrible words. Are you fixed yet? I don't know if you'd say that to someone who was returning from a physical health
yeah.
issue or something like that. And then, and then the manager was like, "Oh, I feel like I want to give you a hug." And I was like, "Don't, you're going to make me cry." And he's like, I won't. So yeah, it was a very, very emotional time. But that, and, one of my, I say oldest friends, we don't really talk that much. When I said to her, I met up with her, I think it was in the summer. So I was diagnosed like in March, but I'd definitely been having symptoms since the January. I think I met up with her in the summer for lunch, and I said, "Oh yeah, this year's been a really tough year." And she said, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" I was like, "Oh, well, I've been um, diagnosed with depression, and I'm taking, antidepressant medication just to try and help." And she was like, "Oh, you should only take medication when it's serious."
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Thanks for that. And that's not what you need to hear when you're
They're
feeling
not.
really well. If someone had epilepsy or asthma or, a heart condition, you wouldn't say, "Oh, you should only take your inhaler when it's serious," or, you should only take medication when it's serious. It's kind of like, well, I'm glad you think you know more than my doctor actually about this medication. Like, I tried without medication, and I'm not saying medication is the answer, but it gave me the boost that I needed whilst I went through CBT and looked after myself physically and did all of the bigger things. There's no magic tablet. I appreciate that. And there's a lot of criticism around, antidepressants are being given out like sweeties, and that's a fair point to be made. But yes, medication certainly helped me, but it wasn't the answer. I'd started taking medication, and the journey from there, it was so hard. I can't even describe how hard it was. But yeah, those conversations made such a huge impact on how I felt.
And
Damaged
people
relationship.
use the wrong words and stuff and the wrong terminology and saying the wrong things. It makes you as the person feel even worse.
Well, yeah. So it realized the fear that, well, I'm judging myself. I'm an idiot. I'm being oversensitive. What's wrong with me? Why can't you just snap yourself out of it? And then those conversations just realized those fears and those thoughts about myself. So I've been self-stigmatizing the whole time, which is a common reality for lots of people living with poor mental health.
Yeah.
But then those conversations really kind of, well, that's realized my fears. Whereas the positive, supportive conversations completely challenged my fears. So I had those two extremes of amazingly supportive, just deeply compassionate, wonderful conversations where I did not feel judged and people being patient and kind. And then I had the complete opposite of those really stigma, and those relationships never recovered. The trust never really recovered.
Yeah.
And that was one of my kind of like oldest friends really saying that to me. And haven't seen each other since.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's I recognized that the huge impact, and that wasn't, there are people who treat it far worse than that, right? So,
Yeah.
for me, that could be deemed as relatively mild, those conversations that I've had, but they cut a hole in my heart really quite deeply, and it stuck with
Someone's
me.
going through such a hard time as well. Like they're not gonna, it's hard to recover back from that when you're already sort of so like hating on yourself anyway and hating how you feel. For them people to add to that, it doesn't do anyone any help, does it at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming out of that, experience, yeah, I was very much like, we need to raise more awareness about mental health in the first place. This isn't stuff that's made up. You don't choose to go into a deep depression, you know, don't choose these illnesses, like people don't choose to have multiple sclerosis. But I think sometimes, because people, well, it's your brain, you have a choice. Well, actually, no, your brain is an organ like your heart's an organ, or your kidneys are organs, and things can go wrong with them. And your brain is hugely, hugely complex as well. So just add that on top. So yeah, definitely wanted to raise that awareness and do more about the positive and supportive and empowering conversations, which, you know, we're not skilled to have. We're not taught how to have these conversations. So you can't necessarily blame people for, you know, using language that's unhelpful and this, that, and the other. But I think saying, "Are you fixed yet?" I think that's immediately a no-no.
Yeah.
Like, whether however educated you are, it's just, yeah, you just don't. It's just unhelpful.
Don't say that. You wouldn't say it in any other way, would you, if it was a physical one? So why
Yeah.
would you say it for that side of things? You just wouldn't.
I'm sure there wasn't any intent to hurt, but there's a big
Yeah.
difference between intention and perception and how people receive communication.
Yeah.
You know, working in HR, oh, it's office banter. The word banter, it just scares me, because you might intend to be bantering, but what is the recipient actually receiving? You know, how's it making them feel? So, so yes, that was really kind of the fire. And I didn't know how to get into it. I mean, initially I was very much, I just need to get better whilst I want to do this raising awareness and how do we have conversations. You know, my focus was very much on getting better. And, you know, that took time, and it's going to take time, you know, no different to if you have a physical injury. I mean, you can't really compare the two, but, you know, if someone broke their leg, for example, you wouldn't expect them to run a marathon tomorrow. Different to someone, you know, oh, they've just been diagnosed with depression, will come to work, or, you know, just get out of bed. You know, that can feel really, really hard
to do anyway. Yeah. So was it not long after that you started Your Wellbeing Hub then?
So I guess Your Wellbeing Hub, I officially launched in kind of like January 2020. So I was working in HR full time, and it was at the back end of 2017 when I became a qualified MHFA instructor. So I was approached at my new workplace, because I've been quite open about my lived experience of depression previously in 2016. And so I was approached to become a mental health first aid instructor. And because I'd done lots of learning programs, I'd written workshops before and delivered enough programs, they kind of said, we think you'd be great for it because you have the lived experience, but also the HR experience, and having written delivered workshops, it kind of all just marries together. So so I took that opportunity. I was sponsored by my employer at the time, which was amazing. And yeah, and that's where I started my journey, running the programs internally. Did that for a couple of years alongside my full-time HR roles. And at the time I was also getting interested externally as well. So I used to book holiday to spend a couple of days training people, and then I'd come back into work. And then yes, I did that for a couple of years up until the end of 2019, by which point I was kind of burnt out with HR.
Yeah.
I was getting promoted, which is great, but I was moving more away from the people stuff to the strategic stuff. And strategy is vital, yes, absolutely. But I like around, I like being with people. I liked supporting and coaching and navigating different situations and scenarios. My work was just taking me further away from that. So there are a few things that were going on, and I just felt less happy in what I was doing. So yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going to go. I was looking at different HR roles, and I was just like, I don't see myself being motivated for 3 months or 6 months or whatever else. So I decided to park the HR career
and do this.
Launch in January 2020, and then we went into lockdown in March 2020. So my family had a slight wobble of, Sally, what are you going to do now? Are you going to go and get an HR job? And I just thought, well, I could, but I won't be happy. I'll be miserable. And I just worked hard at getting the business going.
Yeah, and I suppose with the lockdown stuff as well, that must have added like an element to obviously all the mental health first aid, because that was obviously peak of when everyone was struggling, because obviously they couldn't go and see their families and they couldn't see their friends, they couldn't do stuff. So it probably added a lot more to the conversation and awareness around it all, I'd imagine.
I mean, the impacts were really real, and people are still feeling the effects of everything that happened, 4 years ago now. And I mean, I could go into a whole spiel about that, but let's not go down that road. Absolutely. I mean, at the time, MHFA wasn't available online. So MHFA England had to do a lot of work with MHFA, or well, with Australia, who carry the original license to make an online program. So, and I think that's where, my family are having a wobble of like, it's not online, it's all face to face. We've gone into lockdown. How are you going to earn money and this, that, and the other? And I think they were a bit worried because I was saying, no, I'm not going to go into HR. I don't feel that's where my passions are. I think I'll be unhappy. And actually, HR was one of the first kind of roles to go in organizations because it's overhead rather than it's not sales who bring in money type thing. So I could see I'm still a member of lots of HR forums of people being put at risk of redundancy, and I was kind of like, yeah, I could get a short-term contract, but ultimately it's going to take away from what I want to do, and that was to build a business around mental health, build out MHFA, broaden that and go into suicide first aid, which I do now as well. So I've kind of said, I've got enough money to last me this many months. If at this point in time, in this many months, it's all going to pot, then yes, I will start looking for an HR position. That can be my kind of backup. If I go and get a full-time HR role, I'm not going to have the time to be able to build and deliver what I want to. So, MHFA England, the online program became available. I think it was in the spring, maybe May time, June time. And I just worked on my business every single day, networking, connecting, reaching out, sending emails. I was working full time on my business. I wasn't earning money at that point necessarily. I had a bit of income collaborating with other instructors. But every day I was like, I'm going to make this work. And I was just doing as much as I possibly could. And then I think it was the October 2020, things really started to pick up where I was getting inquiries and all of that networking connections and all that building. That's where I started to get busy, and I was starting to see the wins and starting to see things come to fruition. And I've met other instructors on kind of different networking platforms where they're saying, I'm really struggling for work. I'm running my business, but I'm not getting any inquiries. And it's kind of like, well, you can set up a business and sit there.
Yeah,
but people are going to come to you because people need to be aware that you exist.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how people have said, people have become much more mental health aware, and they have, and good. And it was needed. And it's a shame it took a whole global situation to actually tackle a lot of stigma that we've been trying to battle anyway. So I think we have come so much further forward when it comes to the mental health conversation. That part I'm grateful for. It's just it's taken, something so major to spark that conversation up. It's fine. The realities of working remotely. It's all good. Just a moment of quiet time if people are listening in, as an FYI. Laura's daughter's just come into the room, so she's just helping her out. And I'm not going to edit this out because this is the reality of working remotely.
Sorry.
Hi. I'm not editing it out, Laura. I've just been talking, saying if you're listening in and you can't see.
It's a little reality.
Laura's just stepped in. Laura's daughter's just stepped in, so it's helping her out. And that is the realities of working remotely, which I think we are all used to at this point, right? Yeah. Oh, love it. Is she okay?
Yeah, she's okay. She just didn't want to get out of the kitchen. I think she's like, oh, 1 second. I think just 1 second.
Fine. Oh, love it.
I'm back. Sorry.
All okay?
Yeah, all okay. I was like,
Nothing's on fire?
it was going so well. I knew it was coming at some point.
Oh no, it's all good. Oh no, that's the
We have
beauty.
days, isn't it, of home working now? Another thing from the pandemic as well. And
Yeah, the beauty of little ones,
yeah,
Yeah. I can't even remember what we were talking about. Yes, the mental health
mental
agenda.
health.
I
Yeah,
think more and more people are wanting these skills because more and more people are talking about it, which is a good thing. But
yeah,
then sometimes there's that fear of how do I respond? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? Could I make matters worse? So,
yeah,
yes, really what this program really empowers people to do, and other programs I write as well. Some people don't want mental health first aid; they want to have a much more specific management workshop or something like that. So again, but recognizing that people do want this empowerment and want this kind of skill set, and that's
yeah,
yeah and that's what we can do for people.
yeah. It's nice as well to be able to like offer that, and it's good as well to see like the amount of companies and businesses that are really like pushing for it nowadays as well, and they're really wanting all their staff to sort of know about it and sort
Yeah,
of be made even more aware of it, isn't it? So
yeah, for sure. And I think building on that, mental health first aid has such an important place, but
yeah,
also just recognizing that sometimes people do it because it's a tick box exercise. Oh, we've got some mental health first aiders. Doesn't really build a culture for talking openly about mental health. So it's more than just sending some people on a mental health first aid course. It's about normalizing and naturalizing the conversation, building cultures where work gives you, rather than at the end of the day people feeling exhausted. Having gone into work at a 7 out of 10, if people going home feeling a 4 out of 10, it's
yeah,
not really
not
the
ideal.
position you want to be leading your people in. If someone's having a 5 out of 10, actually hopefully you can build them by the end of the day maybe to a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
So just thinking about how we build workplaces, but there's a lot of challenges here because everything is so competitive. you
yeah,
know Trying to earn more with fewer people, it means people's workloads and things like that are can feel
yeah,
really hard to manage. So yes, I think there's still a lot of work to do when it comes to building culture, but there has to be a starting point, and it doesn't have
yeah.
like that can take
It can take quite a
time,
while
right?
to
It
build
can
it
take,
up.
but having those positive intentions, trying to do small things to create big wins, that's always a good place to be.
So, and to start. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He's just telling me his crackers are finished.
Oh, updates for mummy.
Yes, updates. That's life.
Oh, I love
Oh,
it. I've got no idea how long we've been going for. Um,
I think we're going for quite a bit.
Yeah, I think so. I said, what would you say, about
But
20
just after
minutes?
10, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got no idea. But so I'm just mindful of that. And so let's think about, this is something that I did on the last one, 2 top tips for looking after your mental health. Is there anything specific that you do to maintain positive mental health and well-being?
For me, it's obviously different for everyone, isn't it? For me, I feel like when I'm having days, I've got a few things. Well, a few things.
Uh-huh.
Them is obviously like getting out and getting fresh air, and I know that seems so obvious, but it definitely does help. And I'm usually like I love being at home anyway, but getting out and helping. But then my other, I would say, it's like a bit like a little safe space, is I like to read a book. So I like to read books because it kind of takes me away from reality for a little bit, and it kind of resets me almost. Is that because I've came away from obviously whatever I've been struggling with or whatever, read the book because it's a bit obviously like more fantasy books or whatever, and
Mhm.
it takes me away from reality, and then I've kind of reset myself then to go back into right, I feel okay now kind of thing. So mine's a bit, I'd say that one's a bit quirky in comparison, but the fresh air I would say is definitely
Yeah.
the top tip. Um, for getting out and just sort of helping myself really. And
Yeah.
yeah, reading a book, very different, but yeah, it helps. It helps me. It takes me a while. I think for a lot for me as well personally, I like the escapism a bit. It makes me sort of yeah, like I say, kind of reset almost my thinking because I've stepped away from it, escaped thinking about something else, and then I can come back sort of fresh.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And like you say, it's different for everyone, right? And how
Yeah,
Our mental health is different, so what helps one person might not be for someone else. But yeah, I think reading is such a popular pastime as well. And yeah, you're kind of focused, you're enthralled, you're in this.
Yeah.
And actually, if you've been feeling a bit worried and anxious, it can just help you to, yeah, kind of be removed from that, focus on something else, and then you might feel that kind of calmness once you've done that activity. So
Yeah.
that makes total sense. Love it. Thank
What
you.
about what about yours? Have you got any
Like,
good insightful? I feel
how
like
long
you've
have you
got
got?
a whole list. You've got a book full.
How long have we got? Yeah, certainly. How do you shift your energy? There's lots of ways we can shift energy, but yeah, getting outside, maybe going for a walk, clearing your head.
Yeah.
I love taking a bath. So, sometimes when I'm not feeling great, getting in the bubble bath.
Everything melts away, I feel like.
It does pretty much. But equally, I've had to learn to talk about things. It's something that I never used to do. Something I used to hold on to all the time, but just, sometimes it feels very courageous to
Yeah.
talk. Even with the people that you trust who will always be there for you, it can still feel like a very courageous thing to do.
Yeah.
But yes, voicing it much earlier and trying to deal with it rather than going into a negative spiral. So it's something I've learned to do. It's something that I continue to learn to do because it's still a very natural thing for me to bottle things up. I lived like that for such a long time, like 30 years. So yes, I was never really one to express, how I was really feeling. I just kind of absorb and repress and suck it all in. So it takes practice, and it's still taking practice, but it's something that is very valuable to me. So I'm glad it's a skill that I've learned and I'm continuing to learn to do. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's a good one, definitely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending this time with
Right.
me.
Thank you for having me.
I know that, in our one-to-ones, we schedule 45 minutes, not
Yeah,
always
it goes.
an hour and 3/4. So we're going to talk for hours. So I think we've done really well for us.
Yeah, to keep it short and sweet. I know. I feel like this is a record for us.
I know, smashed it.
Yeah. Oh, it was lovely chatting to you as well. So
Yeah,
it's been
amazing. Thank you so much, Laura.
very welcome.
Cheers.
Bye.